to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I am your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Jason Schappert. Jason is the founder of Moolah, an AI-driven investment platform designed to simplify complex financial concepts and offer personalized insights that empower users to make informed investment choices. With a background as a serial entrepreneur, Jason successfully built and exited a previous venture, showcasing his talent for creating impactful businesses from the ground up. He's a passionate advocate for financial literacy, dedicated to making financial tools and knowledge accessible for everyone. Through his leadership and commitment to empowering the next generation, Jason aims to create a world where financial security is achievable for all. You can find Jason by emailing him at jason@moo.law or by downloading his app, Moolah. Hello, Jason. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Olivia, super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I can't wait to get into your life story and really what drove you not only to your exit, but how you decided to leave that business that you initially created and dive into the world of creating not just another company, not just a financial and company, but also a company that is an app, that is app driven. There's so many different dynamics there. But to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Jason Schappert?
Sure. So success for me is the freedom to be with my family. I have a beautiful wife, 3 kids. We all work from home together. By that, I mean kids are homeschooled. Wife and I work together. Interesting dynamic sometimes, but you know what? We do it from the Airbnb we rent when we travel, or just from the house together. Wake up when we want and get to do what we want, and truly lead our family and lead future generations.
And this is something you did not tell me prior, that not only do you work with your wife, which you and I had discussed previously in those dynamics, but you also homeschool your kids. So before I get into your story, I want to touch upon that because that is something that homeschooling, I feel like, used to be more taboo. COVID hit and it became more regular and more normalized.
Yes.
But now it's also becoming a very hot topic, I feel like, especially within certain communities like the military branches who are constantly moving,
Yes.
and sometimes in areas where education might not be as at a high level as other areas, and really wanting to give your kids the best education as possible. So can you tell me a little bit of how that decision went for you guys and how you kind of keep, I'll say, like, home and state separate,
Wow.
and so that none of you kind of get too tied into
That
everyone's.
that is a great question. So we've been homeschooling since the beginning. Our oldest is 10. So back when it still kind of had that weird, like, oh, like you're a homeschool parent, like kind of strange. And then you're right, COVID totally normalized the process. It works for us simply because we travel so much. And how we did it in a fun way is, hey, I have a meeting in New York. Well, we're going to learn about the Statue of Liberty and Central Park and all this stuff. And then we're going to go, hop in the car and go see it. So that was the big aspect for us, really giving the kids these life experiences. But even bigger than that, the kids go to trade shows with us. Half the time they're playing on the floor with their toys while I'm, doing a big business meeting or whatever. Like, they are truly being brought up in it. From 12 years old, I worked in my dad's business, which was pest control. And some of my best memories, I'm sure we'll get into, involve killing bugs with dad. Right. And it's just like, it sounds so funny, but I learned so much at such a young age, something that, elementary school, middle school couldn't teach me. I'm learning customer service and all sorts of stuff by just palling around with dad in the summers, killing bugs. So
Mhm.
that was the big reason for us, that the experience aspect of it.
Yeah, and it's funny that, again, you kind of mentioned this, and we just touched upon it too, because that's something right now where in the relationship I am in, with my boyfriend, being in the Coast Guard, and we're talking about our future
Mhm.
and kids, and he I went to public school, my whole, from
Same. Yeah.
elementary school all the way up to high school. When I went to college, I had your more standard, I'd say, typical route, and journey. And
Right.
he went to private school growing up, all the way through, and then went into the military. And then, especially where things are now, we've both said and realized, especially in today's day and age, there's such a power and dynamic shifts that are happening in education and school districts. And
Yes.
there is that benefit. And he was the one who brought up to me initially, like, we have kids, I want to homeschool them. And at first, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, are you, like, I was a teacher, right? I was a professor for a
Right.
year. I
That's
taught
right.
college students during the height of COVID. So I was like, I
Right.
know how this game plays out. I had to take care
Right.
of those. He's teaching them, right? Because also we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses, and there's certain things like I could do really well at, and there's certain things you don't want me to teach, and
Right.
I have a knowledge gap. And one of the very things he brought up is what you highlighted, is I don't want my kids only learning stuff from a textbook and
Right.
never understanding how to connect the dots on those things, or
Hmm.
learning everything from a tablet, or not really being able to conceptually understand it. And so he was like, I want to be able to teach them about history and then take them to, whether it's the presidential libraries or
Right.
monuments, or like actually be able to take them there. And again, like you kind of noted, when you're traveling a lot, or you also just want to explore yourselves and grow, it's a great way to really immerse individuals into, you're getting the education. Like, I've started to do research on this. You get the
Yeah.
education. And
Yes, you
again,
do.
it's understanding that there are certified education places that are providing
Yes.
this content. You are not making it up.
You're spot on. Yeah, we follow a curriculum, and let me tell you, you're right. It's not always like, sunshine and rainbows. Ella is now into long division with remainders, and I'm like, I used to know how to do this in fifth grade. I have no idea, so I'm taking a picture and post it in ChatGPT. And I say, you know what? I'm going to teach Ella how to use ChatGPT. So we got the 10-year-old over there learning to type, learning how to write prompts. And I'm thinking some parents would scold me for that, but I think, hey, that's the future, and that's this kid knows how to, manage writing prompts for AI and everything else at 10. She could have a
Mhm.
good tech future if she so desires, you know?
Well, and it's those things of being resourceful too.
Yes.
For me, I haven't been the greatest at math. I got better due to certain careers I had, working in supply chain, kind of
Yeah.
had to be able, so I had to hone some of those skills, but also running my own books for my business
Hmm.
really got me to be able to know, okay, if we're doing this level increment, this is where it's getting us, right? And
Yes.
being that number focused makes you really be able to go, okay, I got this. This is what this means. Here's the marks you want to hit, those goals. And so now people look at me, and there's some things I'm like, I don't know. And there's others where it's like 2 seconds and I got it. And they're like, how
Boom.
did you
Yeah.
do that? But it's also understanding the tools and resources we have in front of us. The reason I'm able to go in my mind and picture the numbers is because when I started my business, everything was a typing it into, a calculator on my computer
Yes.
and doing the math and doing,
Right.
and now
Right.
it's like I've reinforced it. So I love how you brought that to the table, because that was a very unexpected conversation.
Oh, thank
But
you.
I think it's so important to identify too the fact that things that don't seem normal can be
Yes.
beneficial,
Yes.
and can be normalized. Like we both said, COVID really highlighted the benefits of homeschooling and understanding your child's education gap, what's
Hmm.
happening in school systems, and just the ability to have different connections. But I want to dive into your journey more. And we'll probably hit more on the dynamics in the household later in this
Yes,
conversation. Um, but what drew you to the entrepreneurship calling? Because as I mentioned in the intro, you're on your second
sure.
business. You built a massive company, you exited it successfully, and your first business was in aerospace. Very
That's
different
right.
than
That's right.
financial, and a field that you personally really were innovating with your company and pushing boundaries. So, what made you get into entrepreneurship in the first place? And what did you see in the aerospace industry that made you dive in and go, this is where I want my first company to be?
Sure. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, like I shared with you. 12 years old, started summer breaks, killing bugs with dad. And I loved working with dad. I knew I wanted to work for myself. And what pest control with my dad taught me something very interesting. We grew up in poverty, and then we moved up to like a lower middle class type family as dad grew his business. But my dad had some very wealthy clients. And one thing was very interesting when we'd go to those wealthy clients and I would walk in as this little kid into these mansions. I'd go, well, I want to be wealthy one day. I wonder what wealthy people do. So I was like super nosy. I'm asking questions like these people have staff. I would go in the guy's office or the lady's office and they would have just books, floor to ceiling books. And I built this association very early on. Okay, successful people read books, which is a weird thing for a 13-year-old kid. Like most are playing, video games and everything else back then. So I just became like yourself, just consuming anything I could. Uh, Audiobooks are the easiest thing for me because I was actually not a strong reader early on. So I'd go to the public library and I'm grabbing, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, like these classics, Bob Proctor, these classics of personal development. And here I am like a 13-year-old kid just consuming all this stuff. And through doing that, um, I developed a interest in not just business, but my real interest was actually in aviation. And I thought I would be a military aviator. I was too tall to fly anything fun. Um, I thought I would be in the airlines, but I didn't want that lifestyle as that's not always conducive for a healthy marriage, right? You're gone all the time. That's not great. I loved teaching. I'm thinking, okay, how can I do this and teach really full time? Well, as I'm listening to these cassettes and then CDs that Zig Ziglar's teaching and John Maxwell's teaching, you have to get leverage in your business. I think, okay, how do I get leverage in my business? It's Jason and an airplane. Olivia comes to me, she has to live within my area and she flies with me. Like I was geographically limited. I was size and weight limited. I had a very small airplane. I could only take on, more petite type students. So I'm like, I had all these limitations. I'm like, well, I guess I need to buy more airplanes and bigger airplanes and more flight instructors and all these things. And about that time, as I'm thinking, what is leverage going to be? There was this little company called GoPro that was just starting up. And about that same time, a little company called YouTube was really making a name for itself. Not owned by Google just yet or anything like that. So I scraped together my, $500 and I bought two GoPro cameras. I said, you know what? I'm going to put these GoPro cameras and I'm going to put them in the airplane and I'm going to pretend that Olivia's sitting next to me, just like she was my student. And I'm going to talk out loud and everything, just like I'm teaching Olivia, even though she's not really there. And I'm going to film the entire thing. I'll figure out how to edit it. This is back like on iMovie and stuff. That's all I knew how to do. And I'm going to upload to this YouTube thing. And one video became two video, became four videos, became, hey, I should put this behind a paywall. And next thing you know, we were teaching people to learn to fly on the internet, as crazy as that sounds. Sometimes business just starts with an idea, a crazy idea, like I'm going to teach people to fly on the internet, which 16 years ago sounded really, really far fetched, especially when you're dealing with buffering speeds, slow internet connections. Learning from home was a little bit out there, right? COVID made it all popular and everything else. But 16 years ago, the idea of sitting in front of your computer and taking a course was just not as mainstream as it is here today. So we really kind of pioneered this concept of an online ground school. Now that business 16 years later, we teach everything from drones to helicopters to airplanes to you want to be an airline pilot one day, aviation maintenance, all these different things. Um, and we're one of the largest FAA test prep providers. Talk about a niche, right? People say, find a passion, find a niche. And we did it with that. So that really, and it's been such a joy to work in your passion, as you and I have talked about several times now.
For you, as you watched your passion become a niche,
Yeah.
become impactful, how was that for you and that journey?
Um, it wasn't always great, oddly enough. So hear me on this. I am very passionate about aviation, very passionate about flying, but sometimes you get so close to it, you get so deep in the system that you're trying to clear payroll. You've got all these different issues. Sometimes your passion kind of turns its head against you and you go, wait a second, I did this because I love it. And now you're rearing your ugly head against me. And across 16 years, there were several times where I had to say, you know what? I need to take a week off. Like I genuinely love aviation, but right now I don't love what I'm doing. What am I doing wrong? And you know what it was oftentimes, Olivia? It was me trying to do things outside of my strengths. If I have one weakness, and it's not just me, it's most entrepreneurs, you want to put the world on your shoulders, stuff the world in your backpack, and I will carry your booty up to the top of Mount Everest. Don't you worry. Like that's what entrepreneurs do. And we're very good at that. The problem is you get burned out doing that. And you'll experience burnout. And I experienced it. And sometimes you have to take a step back and ask, why am I doing this? You know what the big changer was for us? I thought it was for my passion. But one day I got an email from somebody. Obviously, we teach all sorts of things, radio communications, regulations, emergency procedures. One day, somebody sent an email saying, hey, Jason, I had an engine failure on takeoff. I got to about 700 feet. My engine totally quit. And all I heard, they said, was your voice teaching me push the nose forward, look for the open field, don't overextend. And literally from 700 feet to the ground, Jason, all I heard was your voice. And I had a safe landing. And they ended the email by saying, I'm alive today because of you. And I just thought I was making videos. Like I just thought I was just selling courses. I thought I was just helping you pass a test. And you want to talk about an affirmation that you can run on that high for about a year going, we're not just making compelling videos. We are truly saving and changing lives. And when you look at that, and when Olivia, you can look at your own podcast that way and go, you know what? One person's going to listen to this. And because of that, they're going to launch their business. They're going to achieve wild success. They're going to have the spouse of their dreams, the family of their dreams, the business of their dreams, all because of one episode. Like, does that not make your whole podcast? If no one else listened to it, it makes the whole thing worth it. So when you look at things like that, that becomes the game changer in what you're looking to do. Yes, it's your passion, and that's amazing, but you have to add a deeper purpose and mission. You may not know that when you first start. It may sneak up on you like mine did. I'm sure you've gotten those emails before. So it's just like, wow, that is really that's the oxygen that really keeps you going.
And to add to that, I think that oxygen that keeps you going is also the same oxygen that when you get someone who, as an entrepreneur, you might be reaching out to in any capacity, whether it's a potential sale or just networking, and someone
Right.
becomes combative with you, or
Mm,
just like not understanding, and there's no room for dialogue in that
yeah.
space. It's like, okay, well, I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. You don't understand it. That's fine. It's not for
Yes.
you then. And it's that point where you get where you're like, as long as and I've said this numerous times, as long as I know I'm making an impact in some way, then I'm fulfilling my purpose and I'm okay with the path and I'm very happy with the path I go down. But
Yes.
that's what drives me. And I think sometimes we get wrapped up in, if someone comes back to you and they're like, I don't see value in this,
Hmm.
or whatever it might be, we get down on ourselves. So,
Yes.
especially as you built that up, and we're going to go into a minute into your transition to starting moolah. Like, how did you handle that sometimes of, again, as you mentioned in your response, starting a aviation training platform that, and I'll kind of call it a platform because it's
Sure.
virtually, um, is not a norm. It's
Right.
especially when you started it, it was a unique idea and perspective that allowed other people, whether it was due to location, due to financial reasons, whatever it might be able to actually learn and understand information. And a perfect example of what you mentioned as well is really retain that information
Mhm.
through actually practicing it and being able to practice it consistently and taking that information. So, how did you kind of handle the people who came to you and said, this isn't going to work?
Yeah.
Or, even till you exited that company, how did you
It
handle those
it's it
conversations?
still happens today, even being what most people would call successful, it still happens today. Um, you know what hurts the most is when it happens from people closest to you. It's when your own mother says it, or your brother, or your best friend, or when they don't believe in your idea, or you go, "What do you mean you don't get it? Like, how could you not get it?" You have two options when this happens, whether it's someone in their mother's basement firing off a nasty comment on YouTube, or whether it's a brother or sister or a parent, right? You really have two options. Option one is you can get down on yourself and oh woe is me and be like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh and the world's gonna end, right? Or you can take the approach that I've taken and helped others take, which is I first ask myself, is there any truth to what they're saying? Meaning, what can I learn from this? And this is even true of the spicy YouTube comment that somebody leaves or whatever it is. Is there any truth? Like they leave a nasty comment, oh, your lighting was terrible, your eyes were red, or whatever, like whatever it is. You go, okay, that's true. I was really tired. My eyes probably were red and I was exhausted in that video, or whatever it is. Like I can learn from that and I can get better next time. Um, and then, yeah, still you can delete them, ban them, whatever it is, if they're truly nasty to you. But just because somebody is grumpy with you doesn't mean there's not maybe a nugget of truth that you can use to get better. We bootstrapped both businesses, but I know plenty of friends that have sought out, Silicon Valley venture capital money and have heard no. I don't know about hundreds of times, but let's say 50 times. Could you
Hmm.
imagine you've got this baby, your dream business that you want to build, and you're trying to raise money for it, and you have 50 people tell you no? Like what gets you up and keeps you going? You have to look at every no as another opportunity to get better and better. I know
Hmm.
you've read the book Think and Grow Rich, and if someone listening has not read it, I highly, highly recommend it. It was written in 1937, still just as relevant here today. Napoleon Hill's the author. Um, Napoleon Hill says in there, in every adversity, there's the seed of a greater advantage. But what is a seed, right? Okay, a seed is nothing unless I plant it in good soil, unless I begin to water it. If I bring it in when it's too cold in those Alaskan winters and put it out when it's springtime and do all these different things, like you've got to baby this thing just to get a little silly sprout, and then you still have to protect it. In every adversity, there's a seed of a greater advantage if you choose to see it that way. So next time someone tells you no, next time someone tells you, hey, Olivia, yeah, cool idea, but that's not going to work. And here's the 12 reasons why. You say, okay, are any of those true? And if so, how can I sharpen my pitch? How can I get better? Thank you for that feedback. And I'm going to keep plugging forward on this thing. That's the entrepreneur journey. It's everyone's looking for magical home runs. And the true way, as you know from doing this, to achieve success is a lot of little base hits, right?
Hmm.
Everyone wants the home run because that makes it on ESPN and all over the news. But at the end of the day, just hit the ball, keep it in play, and make it to first base. And we'll congratulations. Let's go to second base tomorrow, right? That's literally the recipe for success. Stop looking for these home runs. Stop looking for overnight success. They are very, very rare. Um, but that's the society we live in. We live in this Instagram society that everybody sees this beautiful facade on stage, but behind stage is absolute chaos. And you know this from your previous, being in athletics, right? These there's this beautiful the game that goes on, but the locker room is a mess and the coach is cussing and everything else. And they all come out smiling, ready to play in the next quarter. But you were just in the locker room going, I can't believe that just happened.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think too, the other aspect is it as someone who's also bootstrapped their business,
Yeah.
there's pressures that go with that. But so many advantages. I ironically recently listened to Mark Cuban's masterclass he did because I was
Yeah.
on a flight back to Alaska and Delta offers
Yeah.
some of those episodes. And I was like, okay, I haven't listened to any of these, but I highly respect Mark Cuban
Yes.
because he's always been very transparent about his journey and what has worked and how he's thought outside the box. I said, you know what? I'm going to listen to this. Let's just see what this is about. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in one of his highlights, and then he ended up focusing on it for a while, but like kind of his one of the chapters, I would say, was on the fact that there's such power in bootstrapping your business because this moment and he even brought this up, so many people think they need all these investors right away and they need to onboard so many people, but then because they don't have the funding yet, instead of taking on roles themselves, they've now hired people. Well, now
Yeah.
whether your initial intention was to bootstrap or to get funding and investors, you have to get investors. And he said every time you do that, you also lose a piece of your business and that
Yes.
control. So really understand where you're going. But the second part to what you said that really resonated with me, and I could go into a probably deep dive conversation with you on this as well, is the aspect that we really have to understand where we want to go and cancel out the noise sometimes. Because, as I have now launched two businesses and running them simultaneously, I can tell you when I said I was going to get into the podcast space and what achieving success has within its three divisions, predominantly it's within the podcast space, right?
Of
My
course.
book was released before the business was even an idea, and that kind of sells itself. And then I had my podcast and my podcast consulting. And even though the podcast industry is continuously growing, it still is very in its infancy stage overall, I
Yes.
would say. So when I said to people, yeah, you know what? I'm doing this business full time. I'm leaning into it. This is what I'm doing. The amount of people who just didn't understand it because not only was it a newer industry, not your typical route, but also something that was not really being done.
Right.
And there's things I do that people don't do, that there was no way for someone to conceptually connect the dots on how it can work. So then you got that back of like, are you sure you want to do this? Well, and really and it got to a point where, kind of to what you were saying, I took a moment to go, okay, first of all, I was confident enough in my decisions to never fully listen to it. But
Right.
sometimes, you get in your own head, and I finally got to a point of just hearing it where I was like, the questions are similar. Why are they asking these questions? And I took the time to ask the question. And for me, that's when I realized they just don't understand where this is going, where the industry is, like all these different aspects. And unless you really sat down and explained every bit to them, there
Yeah.
was going to be that gap. And I had to be okay with understanding that their questions and their thoughts came from a place of not understanding, and that
Yeah.
there was probably still going to live in that. And like, I look at that versus the apparel company that I've launched, and a lot of people shop, a lot of people want items made, a lot of people want all these things. So when I said I was doing that, there was a lot less questions in the room. The
Be
questions were
because
more.
it's something they understand, right?
Mhm.
It's a difference of, can I understand your business? Which is actually a very interesting point, right? imagine when I went, and we'll get into moolah stuff later, but telling my 62-year-old mother, hey mom, we're building this AI basically robot that does trading for you and helps make predictive decisions on your behalf based on your age and risk profile. And mom goes like, I've got a guy that does that, Jason. Like, why do I need a robot that does that? I said, well, again, you're not my demographic, mom. Like, you could just say that, or you could go, okay, there may be a point to all of this sort of stuff. So, like you said, they understand the apparel business. Everyone wears clothes. That's great. But a podcast, like, those are things I listen to, Olivia. Like, what do you mean you're going to make a podcast? Like, don't they just exist out there, right? It's funny. And oftentimes that tells you you're onto something. If not
Mhm.
everybody gets it, but enough early adopters do, that's all it really takes. And sometimes pioneers get arrows, right? You start going into some new land. There may be some people that live in that land that don't like you so much. So you
Mhm.
do have to be mindful of that. But it is such a balance between adding innovation um, and understandability. So how do I go into the apparel business and truly innovate and more importantly differentiate as well? And you and I have talked about it before. You're going into really some untapped space is what you're actually doing, which is genius move from that standpoint. So there's ground to be gained from there. And I think that's such a great point, balancing, differentiating, innovating, and make sure enough people understand it.
Yeah. And I want to start going into moolah because
Yeah.
what made you decide after your exit, and you had a very successful exit
Sure. Thank you.
too? It wasn't just like, okay, the doors are closing behind me. What do I do next? It was a decision you made to do something next because
Right.
you didn't need to do
Yeah.
anything. You could have
Yeah.
been very comfortable. You could have
Yes.
retired. But for you, you decided not only do I have to continue to do something and make that impact, but instead of aerospace, I'm going to go into the financial side of things and
Yeah.
I'm going to create this app. What was that transition like for you?
A great question. So you're right. There was about 48 hours of retirement. And then my wife and I said, oh my goodness, this isn't going to work. We need to do something, right? Um, and I've always been very passionate about finance, but even more a passion for me and my wife is teaching. What did we do for the past 16 years? We taught people to fly airplanes, right? And to build great businesses and careers or hobbies in aviation. And what can we teach next? Where's the next big gap? And actually, the idea came from aviation. Um, so in my airplane in front of me, and you know this from being around helicopters and everything else, and all your aerospace background as well. But in my airplane, I have 6 instruments in front of me. And those 6 instruments at any given point are telling me what just happened 30 seconds ago, what's happening right now, and what's likely to happen in the next 30 seconds if I keep doing what I'm doing. And I thought,
Mhm.
why don't I have this in my online banking? Why don't I have this in my investing? Why is, not to throw names out there, but why is like Wells Fargo and all these big banks just so clunky and like stuck on Windows 95, it looks like? Where is the beautiful banking and the technology and the investing that is easy to read? Where is my instrument panel for my finances that says, hey, Jason, you've got more month than you've got money right now, buddy. And if you don't fix it, this is what's likely to happen. You're going to run out here pretty soon. So don't you run down to Best Buy and buy that TV. Instead, you need to realize you've got Netflix, Paramount Plus, Hulu, HBO Max, and Prime. Do you really need all 5 of those? And the answer is usually no, right? So where was the intelligence to help us make informed decisions? Our demographic is that 30-year-old firefighter, that 35-year-old nurse, that enlisted person in the military, these people who are bettering our communities and are so focused. You know how long your boyfriend works, the crazy hours he works. Do you think that he has time to come home and hop on an investing app and start making smart investments and stuff? No, he knows he needs to start investing, but he needs a done for you solution with some self direction and everything else. To help make those informed decisions while he's doing his passion, his career, or building his future career if he doesn't want to stay in the Coast Guard forever, whatever that is. to set you two up for future success at your young age. Like that's who we're really targeting with all of this. And it's such an underserved community because the Schwabs and the Fidelities of the world, they're going after the wealthy, 60-year-old that's got millions of dollars to invest. No one's going after the person who says, listen, I only got $100. I don't know what to do with it, but I know I need to get started. That's who we're after. Like we are going after the underbanked, the underserved, the people that get pushed under the rug that don't have access to all the same Wall Street tools and great interest rates and everything else that the wealthy have. So we're really trying to democratize finance is what we're really doing. And with that, inside, of course, is an entire learning management system where we're teaching how do credit scores work? Should you lease a car, buy a car? Is now the right time to buy a home? Like we have all these videos, and as you alluded to in the intro, everything's on the app. Like everything's in your hand. You can only do it on the app right now. We don't even have a desktop version. Will be in the future, perhaps, but this is for the person on the go, right? That can hop on their lunch break and do something real quick and then get back to work. This is the single mom who's trying to make ends meet. That's who we're really going after to truly help and invest in.
And one thing I loved about it too, because it resonated with me, is I'm a person who wants to understand, whether it's my job or
Yes.
not, I want to understand. And I remember years ago, in high school, because my high school had some business classes you could take. And that's really, I was like, I'm going to do this because I like business. And I got into taking those classes. And one of the things we talked about, and then again, it took it to a different level in college, was investing and what that could look like. And so then I would talk to people, and obviously there are investors out there, and investing is important and it allows you to do different things down long
Yes.
term. And I'd ask questions, and I'm like, okay, you're not really giving me an answer here. Like, you're not helping me understand this. You're just saying to me, well, you give me X amount of dollars, we're going to put it in invested. And if you want to sell it, I'll sell it for you. And I'm like, okay,
Right.
but what do I invest in? What's
Right.
worth the money versus like it's on an intake right now. And it's potentially going to drop in a month.
Yeah.
So wait till it drops. Like those are the little nuances that unless you spend hours and I
Mm-hmm.
mean probably hundreds of hours really learning, because that's one thing my boyfriend did years ago. He does invest and he does take time weekly to check everything,
Yeah.
and checking it takes time, analyzing
Yes.
it takes time, but he knows the value in it. And he
Yes.
also understood that unless he wasn't getting the answers and knowledge he needed, so he needed to go out and immerse himself in it and
Yes.
learn as much information. So I think there's such value in teaching and understanding, because I think there's also a level people think that if they teach someone how to fish so they could
Yeah.
catch the fish on their own, that they're
Right.
no longer going to be needed. And that's not necessarily the truth. If an investment banker teaches someone about investments, that potentially just
Right.
helps them make more sound decisions. They still potentially
You
need
are
you.
You're spot on. But unfortunately, many of these big banks preach that, oh, we are all for financial literacy. Yet, if you look at their income statements, they make a ton of money off of NSF fees and late fees and credit card interest and everything else. But we are all for keeping people, literate. In reality, they like keeping you oppressed a little bit. So they keep getting those NSF fees. That's what it really comes down to. And that's the big aspect of this. We want to truly democratize finance and put the power back in the people's hands.
So obviously Moolah has recently launched and is doing
Mhm.
well. What do you hope that if someone went today, and I'll use myself, I went on to Moolah, what is the initial investment if someone wants to start using it as an education tool to start investing and practicing in investing? What is that minimal dollar you recommend using and what you really need to be able to do that?
Y- With us, you can actually open an account with just $5, which sounds crazy, but it's just to get somebody, and that's your $5, by the way. We're not taking anything out of that. There's no commissions or anything like that. We charge one very, very small fee, 0.005%. of that ends up on every $100. It's a nickel we charge each and every month for the account. So it's such a minimal thing because fees will eat into your profits. And we want people to start exactly where they're at with whatever they have. That's the big aspect, to get in there, get learning, because we want to grow with you. And back to that point, like I shared, that gentleman with our aviation business that sent me an email, I had an engine failure, you saved my life. I am looking forward to the day that, hey, I retired early because of the Moolah app, or I'm financially free because of that, or I'm debt free today because of the Moolah app. Like, that is the dream. And like you said, we recently launched, so those emails haven't come in yet, but I'm so excited to go on that long journey with everybody. This is a long-term play for us. This is not some, get rich quick thing. Or like, we build businesses for the long haul, and look at our customers, look at our members truly as family and everything, just like you do with everything,
And I think there's such power in that. And that was, I laughed and smiled when you said that, because I was just thinking that and tying it back to what you had said earlier. There's people who go into entrepreneurship or certain businesses thinking you're going to make that, what you see on Instagram really quickly. And that's not
Right.
what really happens. And to your point of what you said earlier, is that's where the burnout comes. That's where when you go, okay, this
Ugh,
isn't really for me, because you're not thinking long term. It takes time to
mm-mm.
build something of substance and of value. There are going to be hiccups
Yes.
along the way. There are going to be growing pains along the way. There are going to
Yes.
be the questions of growth and all of these things. But to your point, when you're in it for the long haul, you take those in strides and you go, okay, we're able to grow off this. We're able to
Yes.
really add that value. And I love how you can start with just $5.
Yeah.
It's that, I hate to say it, but cheaper than some of people's Starbucks coffee orders.
Isn't
So
that the
think about
truth? Yeah, isn't that the
that.
truth? Just get them started exactly where they are, right? Because $5 becomes $10, becomes $20 as they continue to grow.
Mhm. And what do you hope, as we say, long term,
Mhm.
that if you can say, this is that story of that email I get, where I know a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever it might be, that the app has really made that impact.
I think it goes back to the first question you asked me, right? What does success mean to me? It's
Mhm.
something different to everybody. To that single mom out there, it might be investing and saving enough to put their child in a private school education. That could be success. Or saving for an early retirement, or like, success is different for each and every person. But for that person to achieve their own success, and for us to play a small part in that through the knowledge portion and then giving them the tools to do that, that is success to us. And that is what we're really after. We're not chasing dollars. We're chasing other people's empowerment to pursue their dreams.
Jason, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Sure. So we're all across social media. It's a Moolah Copilot. I had to work the aviation theme in there. So from TikTok through YouTube, everything in between is Moolah Copilot. They can see some of that great training material out there that we're just posting on social media as well. Of course, they can download the Moolah app either in the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. And they can just shoot me an email or check out the website. It's moo.la, moo.la, Moolah.
Thank you, Jason, for all of your insight today. We really covered everything from
Yes.
family dynamics and homeschooling to aerospace to the financial sector and making an impact. So I appreciate so much you joining me today and really sharing your insights.
Thank you, Libby. Really appreciate you as well. Thank you.
And a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation include successful people read books. And as Jason mentioned this earlier, he learned that by asking questions, diving in. What makes you successful? What were the patterns he's seeing? And as he said, it wasn't just about reading the books, right? He had issues with reading when he was 13 years old. So he said, okay, how can I do this? By leveraging it to my advantage. And how he did that was through audiobooks. And I think it's a perfect example, not just showing the power of reading other people's stories, learning other people's lessons, so you might not go through the same difficulties they did, but also hearing about the successes and what works. But it was also a pure example that Jason demonstrated of, hey, just because you have to do something one way, like read, doesn't mean you can't take in that information a different way. As well as find a passion and you'll find a niche. Just like Jason did, his passion was teaching aerospace. And he was like, how can I do this? And he found that passion. He knew what that passion was. And he decided, okay, this is the niche I need to sit in. And then he took it a step further, even in Moolah. He goes, my passion is teaching. I know I want to continue to teach. Where do I think I can make the biggest impact? And that is going to be the niche I sit in now. And that's what he did. He said, I get to teach financial literacy. I get to make the impact, the difference. And I'm going to do that so that everyone has it at their fingertips. And I love that, as well as if there's any truth to what someone is complaining about and saying, just because, as Jason mentioned, someone is combative or they're grumpy towards you or they're questioning everything you're doing and saying it's not going to work. Sometimes we need to take a moment and take a step back and say, is there any truth in that comment? And if so, what can I learn from it? And how can I potentially pivot and grow? As well as in every adversity, there's always a seed to water and grow. And I love how Jason brought this up, because we all have adversities we go through, whether it is in starting our own business and growing our own business, or in our everyday lives and how we're implementing things that we perceive. We learn our situational awareness to different aspects into our own decision making. So understand that even though what is happening to you today or your life's trajectory isn't the same as the person standing next to you, there's a superpower in that. And if you water it and grow that seed, it can become a beautiful outcome. And the challenge I have for everyone today and is really on understanding our own financial literacy. Jason brought up with the app Moolah, there's the educational aspect and what that has really driven him. And I want to challenge everyone to go to the app and take that $5. It's $5 and play around and understand investing and make that first investment and see where it goes and really understand and leverage your financial education and literacy to take yourself and grow to where you want to be. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Jason Schappert. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.